We track all, thousands of billionaires around the world. This year, there was a record high of over 2,700. And I'm part of our wealth team that tries to track the fortunes of all these, billionaires in the US and abroad, and how it's changed over the last year and the stakes they hold in all their businesses. Most people got richer. Of the billionaires from last year's list have a higher net worth this year. There were almost 500 newcomers, a lot more people that dropped off that returned to the list. It kind of contradicted the pain and the suffering of a lot of, the normal, unemployment stats that we've seen in the pandemic. But it was a good year for billionaires and not many drop-offs at all. There were just 61 people, billionaires from last year's list that dropped off this year's list. And that was the lowest number since 2011 when there were 41. But back then, there were only about 1,000 billionaires, about half as many as there were this year. It was really, by proportion, lower than we've seen in decades. And, a lot of that was because of just the stock market's crazy recovery, like I said. But there were a few big names that have been in the news, like Kylie Jenner, that we saw that dropped off this year's list that were on last year. It got a lot of publicity when she made our list in 2019 and 2020, I think, when the filings that her family showed reporters and analysts that led people to believe that her Kylie Cosmetics business brought in a lot more revenue than it actually did, which was exposed when about half of it was bought by the beauty company Coty, and then it has to file, public filings that actually show what its revenue really is. And I think it surprised a lot of people that it was lower than what they were saying. So we had to value her stake a little bit lower, and now we have her at $700 million. So it's not like she's really hurting too much, but she's not on the list anymore. But like her half sister, Kim Kardashian, actually made the list for the first time. So she dropped below Kim, but she might be back in the next few years. There were others. The West Virginia governor, Jim Justice, has a lot of money in coal mining and his Greenbrier resort that didn't do so well in the last year. Craig Newmark from Craigslist. Craigslist revenue dropped about 26% last year, so he dropped off. Craigslist revalued by revenue and as a multiple for some of its, competitors, and its revenue declined 26% last year because of, just more competition from Facebook Marketplace and other things that I guess a lot of people are kind of considering more reputable than Craigslist. Or at least, have the legitimacy of a big company behind it. The Craigslist revenue has kind of declined the last 2 years, and so his net worth has dropped just under $1 billion. Last year was a kind of a special case when we had several hundred drop-offs because, the list was priced out right it ended up being right close to the bottom of where the stock market crashed when it was the coronavirus pandemic was just starting to become a big deal last March in 2020. And there weren't many people that dropped further down than that where it was, last year. But, I think in the future, you'll probably see some regression to the mean somewhere in the middle of this, year's small number of about 60 versus last year's a few hundred. With, the stock market, it's unlikely to be, almost, up 70% for another year like it was this year. It doesn't usually happen most years. So I think over the next year, you'll probably see a few more people that drop back down below that threshold as the stock market kind of levels out and stops, roaring back. But overall, I think, it's pretty clear that the trend of the last 20, 30 years since we've started tracking this is that in general, the rich get richer. I think that's probably pretty likely to continue.